So, on today's episode, which is actually episode number one, it was an interview I did with a younger gentleman named Rex Tabachnick, who happens to be doing something I thought was pretty interesting with creating artificial intelligence apps through hustling on Upwork and different job marketplaces just to get some real-time skills. It was an interesting conversation. He's a bright person, funny person to talk with, great guy, and I think it was an awesome interview. So I actually broke it up into three different videos that I'll be posting. This is the video number one, so please keep coming back because I will be posting more and do me a favor and hit the like and subscribe button. And I'd like to get this channel. My goal is to get this channel to 10,000 subs within the next 12 months. So it's a personal challenge of mine. So help the channel out if you like certain content that we're covering, or if you want to hear other content, shoot me a DM or hit something in the subscription below. But either way, and please enjoy.
I mean, there's so many new discoveries happening every week. And the cool thing about AI is that the faster you make progress, you can then allow yourself to make even faster progress. Because it's kind of like a cyclical feedback loop where, the smarter AI gets, the smarter AI can tell you how to get smarter.
Yeah. And I don't think I don't, right? It's like comes to the main question, right? It seems like AI is everywhere, right? And it does get smarter, but where's the actual demand at? And I think that's
Mm.
what the purpose of this conversation is about is like you have the front lines, you've been in the trenches with this for a couple months now. And what we've seen from a year ago is how much the technology changes year over year, right? And how much smarter.
Yeah.
So, I mean, like, I think kind of just to start is how did you kind of fall into the freelancing or consulting space as someone who's still in college?
Yeah, well, I'd say it's probably a result of the changing job market. Now, like, there's a lot of stuff going around on the internet that computer science majors, they call them pre-homeless, because with the invention of AI, um, it's replacing junior engineers because AI is fantastic at doing low level, basic coding jobs. And that's what junior engineers do. The purpose of having like a young first, second, third year software engineer is for them to learn, and then eventually they get good enough to become senior software engineers who can then do a lot of stuff that AI can't do. But essentially, um, companies are, instead of hiring new junior engineers, they are now getting AI to code for them. And so that replaces a large section of the computer science job market.
So what happens? Let me throw this out then. Do you think the age of the junior engineer is going to be they're just dead, right? There's no jobs there? Or how are those folks going to get jobs if they're going to school to be like a junior engineer? What do you
Mhm.
do?
Well, if you are a computer science major, I think you have to be much more proactive than you had to be, even 3, 4 years back. So nowadays, or let's say 4 years ago, you could go through college, you could take some classes. You didn't have to do much. A lot of people I know didn't do anything outside of class. They just, followed their classes. They knew some basic coding skills. Maybe they did some leak code. And then they interviewed. It wasn't that hard. And immediately out of college, they got a 100K job, or at least like a 80, 90K job. And that was kind of the path of the software engineer 4 years ago. But nowadays, you can't really do that anymore because the jobs are fewer and further in between. They pay a little bit less, and kind of the prospects of some junior software engineer, they can't do as much as relative to the job market as they used to be able to do.
Right.
And so for a bunch of software engineers or, computer science students now they have to, make projects. They have to actually learn to code because you can't do that on the job anymore. You have to learn before. So you make projects, you make full stack end to end systems, front end, back end, and you kind of have to actually learn how to make stuff to be able to get those jobs. And
Right.
so it's kind of, instead of like instead of, the top 90% of computer science students getting really good jobs, now it's the top 5, 10%.
So then do you see, I guess because you just went straight into the grind, right? You somehow were like, okay, I needed to stand out and start doing this. So the first option to you was it Upwork or did you try other avenues first and then kind of land into getting Upwork hustles to kind of sharpen up?
Yeah, Upwork was certainly not the first thing I tried. I started with trying to vibe code an app because I was taking my own advice. I was trying to create a project, and essentially I was trying to create a mobile app where you could use AI to like scan a picture of your fridge, and it would recommend you recipes based on the ingredients that you had in your fridge. And honestly, it's not a terrible idea. It didn't end up working out because it's very hard to take a picture of your fridge and get all the ingredients in that picture. You'd have to like go into every row and take a snapshot of that. But yeah, overall it was, I was vibe coding like a mobile app to as a school project. And so eventually I moved on. I did over the summer. I did this program that was sponsored by OpenAI that my school ran, and essentially it was just building full stack applications using the OpenAI API. So projects nowadays are very based off of using AI and leveraging what it can do, because that's the future and that's what things are moving towards anyway. Oh,
So
but
for chat, so for OpenAI, we're talking about kind of like chat GPT related apps and kind of functionality. Is that
Yeah,
what?
yeah. Essentially, you use ChatGPT, but you use it from like some kind of external app, and you use that or you do that using an API key, which is like a key that lets you reference ChatGPT.
Right. So then you did that and then you were like, what? You're like, okay, let's make some money. Let's put this to use and see if I can make some money.
Well, yeah, I figured that building applications was one thing, but imagine how cool it would be to say on your resume that yeah, I made 5 grand doing actual AI services for people.
Right.
Because like fortune favors the bold, and you create your own luck, all that stuff. So I figured I would just actually go and see if I could make things for people. So I looked on Upwork and I saw people were posting jobs like I want AI to do this for me and like I want AI to do that, and you can apply to them and then you can get the job and you can actually just build it for them.
So when someone like posts on Upwork or some sort of job board like that, how does someone usually get their like? How did you get your first job, or how did most people kind of get their first job? Is it like kind of a lower level application type thing, or did you just jump straight into it and were like, I can build you whatever, a 10,000, $20,000 app?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, so what I started with is I just applied to every job that I could find. Almost. Well, so there's a couple softwares that allow you to make AI applications without doing all of the backend code yourself.
Right.
Essentially, there's softwares like Zapier. I'm sure you know of. There's also ones called Make.com and N8N.
Yeah.
Those are software that allow you to they're kind of like middle of or like mediums that allow you to connect different applications to each other. And so with that, you can you start on a trigger. So you say, if I get a new email, then I want to do this with it. I want to respond to that email, stuff like that. And so I went onto Upwork and I saw people were looking for stuff like that. And so I just applied to the jobs and took like a week, but I got my first job and then I built it for them.
So within 1 week of applying to different postings, you got your first job. How big was that job as far as like monetary or
Yeah, it's
scale, I guess?
it's either you on Upwork, you can either do flat pay or hourly. And while I would generally recommend against hourly, I did get an hourly first job for I think my starting rate was 32.50 an hour. And it was like a simple email classification, which is you get an email and you ask OpenAI, what type of email is this? And then given 5 different categories, you just classify it as one of those. And then you put like a little tag on the email and it helps you organize your inbox a little bit. But I spent maybe 8, 10 hours doing that. And I logged, I logged all those hours and I made 200, $300 for the first job.
Nice. So first job took a week. Was there anything from when you first started up into that first job that you kind of like changed or tweaked when you were applying to jobs, or did you kind of narrow down your focus on like, hey, you know what, let me just go for the lowest hanging fruit first and then see, or kind of because you mentioned having a buckshot approaches, which you're like, I'll do everything, and then you're like, well, wait a minute, hold on, let's let's narrow this down a bit, try and get some traction here, and then go from there.
Yeah, essentially it was kind of a volume based targeted approach. So I figured for each individual job, uh, there was probably a low chance that they'd want to hire me because I had zero experience. I had just created my Upwork application. I posted a couple projects that I'd made in the past, but I had, no hires, no money made, no jobs, and people don't like hiring people that have no jobs, no experience, which is a similar thing in computer science. You need experience to get experience.
I think that's everything, right? That's like
Yeah.
Google My Business is the perfect example. Like people
Hmm.
go on reviews and feedback more than anything.
Yeah. So yeah, startup costs are huge, and especially the experience cost. So what I did was, in order to increase my odds for any of the jobs, I would, instead of I wanted to figure out some way to stand out, and so I figured, given having done a little bit of social media in my past, people love, and people much prefer when they can see you doing it, or they can see even just you, because it's so easy to send an application saying I'm good for this job, I can do this, trust me, versus going in and showing them a video of you actually building out like the structure of how they do it. They're going to choose you every time. And so what I would do is I would send, like 5 minute Loom videos breaking down like their flow. So if someone wanted an email classification agent, then I would say, okay, well, we start with this trigger, then we route it through OpenAI, and we do a little bit of organizing, and then we classify it with one of those triggers, and that's how I build it. And the response rate when you send a video is magnified, because because I mean, if you see 100 texts, 100 people writing, and one video, you're going to choose the video most of the time.
Right. How competitive is it on Upwork right now? Like for someone who has never, who might be in your shoes, is it like super saturated and hard to get a job, or is it actually pretty wide open still, and it just takes a little bit of practice? Kind of where do you think Upwork is as far as like gig hustling today, and kind of if someone wanted to try it out, or do that full time, or
Mhm.
can they do it full time? Could you turn that hustle into a full time job?
I know people that have, and I know people that do. There's people that make, 9, 10 grand a month just doing Upwork jobs. And especially if you can convert those people into monthly retainers, where you just, you're making new flows for them every month, you can get 2 grand a client, and you can just keep making month over month revenue. But on Upwork, the competition is definitely increasing, because AI agents are a huge buzzword now, and everyone wants to get into the market. Um, as far as like my odds, I get about, well, I get a reply on about every one out of every 3 or 4 jobs that I apply to, and I'd say
That's pretty
six.
good. That's a pretty high ROI, right?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, if you apply to 10 jobs a day, which does take a while because you're filming a video for each one, um, and especially you have to figure out how to do it, and then you map it out in your head, then you actually make the video. But the prospects are pretty great. You get 2 responses a day. One of those converts. That's a job every day,
Yeah.
and it actually
who's hiring right now? Like, who are that you've encountered? Are they business owners? Are they kind of marketing agencies? Like, who's out there in today's marketplace hiring folks like yourself to do these tasks or create these applications?
Yeah, it's mostly like kind of mid-level uh B2Bs or even some B2Cs, but I've been hired by a printing company, a marketing company, marketing agency. I actually am currently working for a hard money lending company. I have a fitness coach. There's, kind of a very wide range of businesses because
Oh,
AI can apply to most workflows and most
right.
businesses, at least in one way.
Are they all like, so for a client like a hard money lender, and for folks who don't know what that is, that's basically someone that lends out money at higher interest rates for investor type loans in real estate. Um, right? That's what they do, that
Yeah.
client. Yeah. So, um, so when they're using a CRM, are they giving you all this access to do all this, and kind of what CRM are they using that might be similar to other clients, or is it just kind of a one-off thing and takes more time
Mhm.
to build out? Like, is it something that you can then go and market to other hard lending companies after you've done that?
Yeah, actually probably the coolest thing about this line of business is once you build it once, you never have to build it again. So if you build one end-to-end system for personal injury lawyers, you now have an end-to-end system that you can go sell and template out for every personal injury lawyer in the United States. So once you build it once, you figure out how it works, then you go, market that, and you can deliver it in a day. And that's how people scale. That's how people are making $100,000 a month doing this stuff.
Right. So they're finding really what they're doing is using Upwork as a way to tap into where the demand is. Is that what you're saying? And then they can create these apps or these agents or whatever functionality in that business and then go replicate that in other similar businesses.
Yeah, exactly. Upwork is a fantastic. Not only is it a great place to start, because if you want to start with cold email, you can try, but you're not going to know what people want. Upwork is like probably the best and the tightest feedback loop for just what do clients want and what are people paying for, and
Right.
then you can turn around and use that in your other approaches.
So then you can take that kind of tested model and then go cold email similar businesses to generate revenue.
Yeah,
Smart.
exactly.
Are there other kids that are not kids, but are there other people that you know who are doing this or are taking this similar approach, I guess, within your class or even kind of within your sphere of influence, or circle of
Nope.
friends, excuse me.
I've heard of someone who, like, I think like 2 degrees of connection away that is doing something similar. They're very niche. They do specifically for for one type of business. They deliver one type of solution, and they just kind of repeat that, which I think is eventually the path that you go down. But as far as people my age, I've never heard of anyone that's kind of really doing this. Though I do go to a party school, so people are kind of busy doing other
So
stuff.
I'm surprised that there's other people in college or maybe just out of college who aren't really hopping on this kind of bandwagon that's one, you can make money, and then two, it really can springboard you into the career you want because it gives you hands-on experience on the demand side. Um, you know, what are the clients that are hiring you? What do they really value? Is it really, what are they mostly after, or kind of how do you separate yourself from somebody else as far as kind of your services and how you market yourself, or what is it you think that would want to have someone come back to either you or somebody else? Kind of what counts in the marketplace today?
Yeah, coming from a value added perspective is probably the biggest differentiator you can have. Essentially, business owners don't care about AI. They don't care about the cool new model that you're using, if you're using GPT-5 or 4.1 or whatever. They care about how much time you're going to save them per month, how much money you're going to make them per month, how much money you're going to save them per month. They care about just the results. And honestly, for most of my clients, they don't even want to see what I made. They just they know that AI can do something, and they say, "All right, make it," and then just make it work. And so you can go and you can say, hey, I have this really cool AI that this agentic workflow that uses GPT-5 and Gemini 2.5 Pro, and and they do really cool stuff together and they edit each other's work. Or you could say, I have this system that's going to make you 10 grand a month, and every time they're going to choose the system that makes them 10 grand per month.
Right. I like how you use the word agentic because that's like a new buzzword that I've heard recently.
Yeah.
And I was listening to a separate podcast, and they were interviewing a billionaire, and the billionaire had used the term agentic, and he was saying that it's like the term, we'll just Google it. So
Yeah.
around 2001, 2002, people were like, "Oh, we'll Google it." Now we're in an agentic age is like the same thing.
Yeah. Yeah. I half the people don't even know what it means.
Yeah, I didn't either, and I had to look it up. I had to ask my AI to tell me what it means.
Yeah.
Uh,
It's not even that important of a definition. Like half the things that people call agentic aren't.
right.
But it really like doesn't matter.
When you're talking to the people that hire you, are they pretty savvy on the tech stack, or do they, where is their level of knowledge when it comes to these things? Are they pretty level one, or kind of where are they at on the spectrum?
Yeah, that is actually quite a wide range. I've had clients that don't know anything, like they're completely non-technical at all. Like actually, the guy I built that email classification workflow for, we got on our first call. He was like, "Hey, you look 14. I don't know anything about." He actually said that. Yeah. I don't know anything about AI. I just want this to work. And so I built it for him. I didn't show him anything that I did, and it works. So he's happy. And there's some people that are like, all right, what model are you using? What software are you using? I want to learn. There's some people that want you to teach them as you do it. And they're like, well, I want to be able to use this for when I do my own stuff, and I want to be able to change it like for how I want. And so it really ranges from completely non-technical people to people that are actually pretty into AI and have made their own stuff.
So you actually get hired by people who are also developing their own tech stack?
Well, there are like AI agencies that hire. I don't take those jobs because that's secondhand. Um, and so, because you're always going to be making like a fraction. Uh, but I would say probably the mid level of knowledge is like the max. It's people that went to Claude and they're like, hey, make me a workflow that I don't know responds to my Instagram DMs, and then Claude makes the workflow and then they run it and it doesn't work, and they're like, oh,
Uh-huh.
okay, well, let me ask ChatGPT why this doesn't work, and then they go in circles for 3 hours and they can't figure it out. And then that's when they hire someone. That's when they're like, all right, I want someone who actually knows this stuff and they can figure it out for me.
Got it. So Claude is right. That's kind of like the de facto vibe coding platform right now, would you say?
Well, there's a lot of Claude's very good. I mean, Claude's good at coding, and it's also good at kind of like cognitive like reasoning and sequential thought. Um, and so that's why like people use Claude Code in their terminal, which is essentially you can download Claude and it can edit your code automatically. And so Claude is, I think, by far like the best coding model that exists today. So yeah, that's people definitely use it for that.
And that's more focused. It's for coders specifically. It's not like for someone who has no code experience and is like, oh, I'm gonna vibe code.
Yeah, no, Claude Code is definitely an aid for coders, but there are software that help you vibe code stuff if you don't know how to code. There's Windsurf, there's what's that other one called?
Replit.
Yeah, there's Replit, Cursor. There's a ton of them.
So as far as kind of jobs that you've taken that you found the most interesting, what are a couple that are worth mentioning that you've done or you've
Hmm.
applied to, or at least talked to some of these business owners and kind of taken a peek into what they're looking for?
Yeah. Most people want kind of I mean, okay, a lot of people want like full custom workflows, like do my onboarding, but there are a couple standardized workflows that can provide value for most people. So if you make a system that generates like a custom like business proposal document, then that can save most businesses money because if you make proposals, then you can use that. There's kind of then a lot of the projects are like super custom and only apply to one specific business. But there's kind of a range, you know?
Right. So you're saying that the more interesting part of of doing some of these jobs is because you kind of get everyone needs a proposal of some form, right? So you're like, hey, that's actually pretty interesting. What do proposals for each different business, what do they look like? How long are they? What are they? What do they use? That's a pretty interesting, I would say, niche or starting point. Kind of are, have you found that most people who need some sort of proposal automation, is it all kind of the same sort of functionality? Or I mean, or I guess, is it the same tech or kind of how does
Yeah, yeah.
that work?
I would say most you can mostly abstract it by the type of business. So most website developers, if they use, well, I mean, I don't know if website developers usually use proposals. Most like contractors use the same proposal, and so you can use AI to fill out a proposal from like a type form
You're
from
talking
like
about construction contractors.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Or, let's say most insurance companies use the same templates of documents. Most printing companies have similar contracts. And
Right.
so if you can just find a way for AI to automatically populate the information in those contracts, then you can go pitch it to every printing company, ever. And so like if you learn how to do one thing super well, then you can just repeat that and keep marketing it.
Right. When they're asking you to do these larger projects, are you finding that they're either too broad or are they pretty intensive or how do how do folks go about tackling some of these larger kind of full scale um,
Yeah,
projects?
that definitely are you talking about like people who do automation?
But I'm just saying in general, like what was something that you ran into where they were like, well, because I remember you showed me the one quote where someone was asking for Airtable to plug into a
Mm,
bunch of different apps, and then when we kind of looked at it, I realized, or it came to my attention that like the request sounded straightforward, but was extremely broad in what they
mhm,
wanted. So it sounded like they didn't actually really know what they wanted to do. They just knew the names of things and were like, well, I want this to plug into this, this, and this. And it's like,
mhm.
well, that's they all do different things. So how do you want this all set up and to flow into each other? Um,
Yeah, yeah. There's like every project that I've done has had some kind of hidden complexity that has made it take longer. So if someone wants uh like an just a simple agent that is going to respond to your emails. We say, okay, all right. So I'll make it receive an email. I'll make it come up with a response. Then I'll make it respond, and then you deliver it to. And then you start, and you're like, okay, well, we need to set up credentials, and then they're like, okay, I can do that on Wednesday. And okay, so we set up credentials on
right,
Wednesday. Then there's two-factor authentication, and then they have to go verify their email, but they're on vacation, so they're back in another couple days, and that's just the beginning. So now you start building it, and their free trial runs out, and so you're okay. Let's start paying for it. Then you start developing, and then okay, you've developed your email agent. It automatically responds, and then they're like, oh well, I want to check if the response is good. And so you're okay, so we can implement like a human in the loop thing. And then they're like, okay, well, I wanted to notify all my employees when we respond to these types of emails. And you're like, okay, well, how do we figure out what type of email it is?
right.
Well,
So it
okay,
kind of starts snowballing, right? That
yeah,
happens a
absolutely.
lot where it's, oh, well, actually the scope of work went from this to now it's an avalanche. Yeah.
Yeah, it's all okay. Well, what specifically do you mean by that?
Right. I guess as far as kind of other folks who might be thinking about getting into the Upwork freelance game or consulting game, kind of what do you think is overhyped right now? Like if you were to give someone some advice who was starting out, kind of where would be the best place to get a foothold in in the kind of Upwork game?
Yeah, I would say that there's a pretty simple process. It's go on Upwork, find the first job that seems easy. Go on YouTube. There's probably a template for someone making that. Go make that, then try and see if you can modify it to what that person's asking for their job. Then once you've done that a couple times, once you have it under your belt, then go apply to a job and just apply to one that you feel like you could figure out. Even if you don't know the exact, the exact process in the very moment, just, apply to something that you think you could potentially figure out. And then keep doing that until you get a job. And then once you get the job, then you figure it out. But don't build something and then go see if people want it. Go see what people want and then build something that they want.
Do you think that's kind of the biggest mistake right now is people are just trying to go out and build something and then kind of go to market with it and then it's not actually it's not in demand?
I feel like that's kind of the main problem in every business. It's, we built something, but people don't want it. So, you always have to start with what do people want, and then you go build it afterwards.
Yeah. The minimum viable product, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Um, you know, I guess you've experienced this now. How is this going to affect your job search or for you personally, do you think that you could probably build more of a future through learning about the Upwork kind of game and then creating your own product? Or do you think this is just better for training you up to go get a corporate job or a job at a bigger at a company?
Well, the goal is always to be able to make enough money that I don't have to go get a job. And that would be great. Like,
Amen.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So, like, because I'm a junior in college. I'm about to start my junior year. And if I give it the next 2 years, like while I've been at college or since I've started this like 2 months ago, I work like waking to going to bed. And so I'm thinking, hopefully, by 2 years from now, I'll have put in 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 hours. And then at that point, I'll be one, good enough at actually building stuff, and two, good enough at selling stuff. And at that point, I don't have to go get a job. But worst case, it looks great on a resume.
Right. So I guess how much coding are you like as far as like technical coding when you're doing this? How much of it is that?
None. It's if I need to,
And boom,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
So you don't need to have a ton of coding to do this stuff.
It's definitely helpful if you do. And there's also a certain thought process that you need to have that helps from doing computer science. And it's kind of just like mapping stuff out in your head. Like it's easy to say, I want an AI voice agent, but going and actually figuring out how that would work and then slamming your head against a wall for 8 hours when something doesn't work when it should, that's kind of the stuff that you learn when you actually code. And it's the same process, except you just instead of coding, you're kind of taking a little bit of an easier route.
When you're talking to your clients, are you kind of walking them through these kind of mental maps, I guess, to get to an end result? Or what is that conversation like when someone's like, well, hey, I have this idea and I want to do this? Are you like confronting them with, okay, well, walk me through that process and how it works in your business? Or what's that conversation like?
Yeah, that depends on the method of outreach. If it's Upwork, people generally know what they want, and depending on their level of experience, they want to be in between somewhat and not at all involved. But in that case, I don't really have to explain very much, except when I'm applying. When I'm applying, I explain kind of the minimum that I have to demonstrate that I know how to do it. When you're doing cold outreach, it is an entirely different game. It is. People want to know what you're doing. They want to know how long it's going to take. Exactly. They want to know how much it's going to cost. They want to know, let's see, they want to know what tools you're using. They want to know, they want to know everything in order to make the most informed decision. And they want to know it three times.
Right. And when you're doing cold outreach, is this to people who probably aren't using AI in their business, or is it more, um, I guess, is it across the board?
It's kind of it's just people that or types of businesses that I know there is a specific solution for. So
Right.
essentially you pick a niche, photographers, you go find some kind of automation that will solve one of their issues. Everyone needs leads. So okay, but what if we go scrape job postings for photographers? We funnel that into a cold email campaign, and now we have a bunch of leads that have demonstrated interest in having photographers. Well, okay, that's a system that's a viable. I haven't built it yet, but I know that it's possible at least. Then you scrape a bunch of photographer leads, you go cold email them, and then if they respond, great. If they don't, then you modify your offer.
Gotcha. So you can um, kind of, create these, I don't want to call them full-blown apps, but they're kind of workflows, right? Is that what you would call it?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
someone could kind of create these hybrid workflows to go out and market it as a product if they wanted to. Or it's,
Yeah, that is the path. Yeah.
yeah,
You basically you build workflows and then eventually you turn one into a software.
got it. I had an interesting experience. So I actually booked my first pressure washing job, but I didn't do the job. I actually
Hmm.
hired it out third party. But
Mm-hmm.
I used Chat GPT as kind of an advisor and a consultant. And I fed it in like basically it was like a partner. So like any information I got, I spit it into the GPT and said, "Hey, this is what I'm looking at. This is what I'm doing. What do you think?"
Yeah.
And it was a very interesting process because it's you get so used to or being programmed to like go Google something or do it yourself, but you have to kind of learn how to just offload and ask the AI. But what I found was that for the most part, like it was absolutely amazing how someone like myself with no knowledge of what I was doing could completely just bootstrap something from zero to a quote that was legitimate, and then also kind of break down, is it a job that I could do or not on my own? And the consensus was I couldn't. So
Mm-hmm.
I'd done all this homework and research and visited companies that rent out equipment, and I learned that the client what the client was asking for was almost a death wish for me to do it on my own. So it was a bit of
Mm-hmm.
a test. So I then just mass emailed and cold called as many companies as I could within the area to try and figure out where these quotes were. And I found that only out of 16 that I contacted, four got back to me, and only
Mm-hmm.
two actually followed up with a call. Um, or three, excuse me, it was three. And then the one that did ended up being they're a big company. They could absolutely, get to the price point needed because they just need volume business. So
Mm-hmm.
it allowed me to basically just make a few $100 for being a middleman. Um, but it was all just because I used the GPT to kind of bootstrap this thing. And I was like, man, um, you know, if you were a business owner or if the owners who are looking for this service were maybe a little more savvy, they probably could have done this themselves and saved themselves, several $100. But when you own 10 gas stations, I don't think they really care about that.
Yeah.
But I
I
think
mean,
other businesses can totally and should be starting to do this. And I think, do you think maybe they will be or more so?
well, I know a couple AI consulting businesses. And all they do is they go into the business and teach people and their teams how they can use ChatGPT to be more efficient and more productive. It doesn't even have to be building specific workflows. It can be, okay, well, we have to make a spreadsheet of all of the clients that we got in the last week. Okay, well, how about we make AI do it instead of Jerry the copy man going and inputting names and emails manually. it's so much more efficient to be
Do you
able to
think that's a
deliver.
good business though, the consulting side of it? I mean, just going in and doing that, or do you think is it better to try and productize some of these flows to then just do it?
I think both are viable businesses. I think it's easier to sell implementation because you don't need as much social proof. It's an easier, I guess it's like it's easier to go, to go find customers that because you're actually building stuff for them. Because what you're providing them is less abstract. Because it's so much harder to sell consulting than, implementation. And so that's why I started with it. But, AI consulting is certainly like a very profitable market.
Do you think it takes more marketing and kind of different approaches to reach those kind of clients for a consulting type
Yeah, I think
job?
it's the same type of work. Essentially, you're going to a business and you're finding a solution for them, except the product is different. The product is information instead of a physical software.
Got it. Um, what do you think are kind of some of the new technologies that you've heard of, or something maybe that isn't really on the radar of most folks that you think is going to really come into prominence in the next year?
Um,
Have you seen anything or heard of anything where you're like, man, that's pretty wild?
yeah, I would say that it's hard to predict the future applications of technology that hasn't been invented yet, because it's kind of like two layers of abstraction. Like in a year, if GPT comes out with or OpenAI comes out with some GPT that's able to do some new thing, then people are going to be like, "Oh wow, you can actually do this cool thing with this new thing."
Yeah.
Um, but as far as like emerging technology right now,
I'm just saying
like
any apps that you've worked with or bumped into where you're like, oh, that's actually kind of cool. Like, I wonder if
yeah,
most folks know about that.
I would say image models. They're getting very good, and you can make full AI YouTube videos with them. Like,
Right.
long form content, you can totally automate.
Who's got some pretty good image models?
There's Midjourney, there's, Dolly, there's Google, or I think VO3. There's like, like just as there's a bunch of competing chat models, there's a bunch of competing image models, but they're
Got it.
all like, they can all generate like dynamic, really, really like, quality images and videos.
Do you think that's another space where the not just the programmer but the videographer might be out of a job in the near future?
Eventually, yes. As far like within the next 10 years, probably not. Though I don't know, who knows? Maybe we'll have AI movies in 5 years, but in all likelihood, it's going to take a while for it to get there.
That's pretty wild. AI movies.
Yeah.
I mean, basically, it's like a Pixar movie, but not created by a human.
Yeah. I mean, imagine if you could just say like, I want a movie about a bunch of emotions in someone's head, and then it creates Inside Out. Like, that would be ridiculous. Though it's not like quite sophisticated enough to get there.
Yeah, for sure. Um, so let's kind of wrap this up, I think, but let's talk about kind of some tools that, if someone was trying to get into this kind of Upwork game or just in general, kind of some tools that you like that outside of GPT, that you think someone might be able to use to kind of create an app or just kind of find, a good rabbit hole to go down and say like, hey, this is how you could probably, find a job and then plug this in and then figure it out and maybe make some money.
Yeah, I would say start by just familiarizing yourself with AI in general. Like, talk to ChatGPT a little bit. Even if you don't have anything to ask it, just like, say hi, have a little conversation. Do the same, like, use VO3 to create some images, videos. Look up top 10 best AI platforms or AI models and go like, go try them out. If you're trying to make money, once you know a little bit, then find some kind of platform like Upwork where it's, Fiverr, it's like direct to client. Upwork is great because people post jobs. And so, just scroll around, look at what people are wanting to make. And
Did you
then
did you ever go on Indeed or any other other sites like that?
No, I've just used Upwork, and kind of I think the platform that you choose, there's no point in me choosing more than one platform because the
Right.
more I invest into it, the better my profile, and then the more likely I am to get a job.
Stick with what you know, kind of go an inch
Yeah,
wide and a mile deep.
yeah. Like I'm certainly a fan of different methods of outreach. Like I have three that I use, which is going to be Upwork, cold email, and content creation on TikTok. But like, figure out what kind of methods, what kind of outreach you want to use, and then just familiarize yourself with the different types of software, and then, experiment with building stuff. Follow some YouTube videos, and then just apply to jobs until you get one.
Gotcha. If folks want to know more about you, what's your TikTok, or how can they kind of follow what you're up
Yeah,
to?
that's Rex Tabachnick. If you just look that up, you'll find my AI TikTok.
We'll put it in the video notes.